Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, ever merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. Dear viewers, welcome to tonight's lecture organized by the UK Talim Department. As per our tradition, we will start the program with the recitation of Holy Quran. Can I request Roshan Musa Ahmedi Sahib to deliver the tilawat and its English translation, please?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وعد الله الذين آمنوا منكم وعملوا الصالحات ليستخلفنهم في الأرض كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم ولا يمكنن لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم ولا يبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا ومن كفر بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الفاسقون. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, ever merciful. Allah has promised to those among you who believe and do good works that He will surely make them successors in the earth, as He made successors from among those who were before them, and that He will surely establish for them their religion, which He has chosen for them, and that He will surely give them in exchange security and peace after their fear. They will worship me, and they will not associate anything with me. Then whoso disbelieves after that, they will be the rebellious. Surah An-Nur, chapter 24, verse 56. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Tonight we have the pleasure of being joined by Mohamed Arshad Ahmedi Sahib. Mohamed Arshad Ahmedi Sahib is the Regulatory Affairs Global Director for a Chinese pharmaceutical company specializing in anti-cancer injectables. He's serving as a National Secretary Isha'at in the Ahmedi Muslim Association UK. As always, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. These will be put on to our guest on your behalf in the last 15 minutes. Please type your question into the live chat and kindly ensure they are relevant to tonight's topic. It gives me a great pleasure to hand over to Ahmedi Sahib to deliver the lecture on Love for Khilafat, sprinkled with golden memories.
Jazakallah, Shukri Sahib, and the Talim Department giving another opportunity. May Allah bless you all. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I'm sure that all Ahmedis around the world have their own personal memories of their relationships with the Khulafas down the years. And some of these should remain personal, only to be shared with family and loved ones. However, there are some that can be shared to inspire and to lift the spirits, especially in the present desperate slumber that we are all going through. So let me begin my journey right at the beginning, which is a story, a true story, that has not ended yet, inshallah. It was in the month of December 1960 that a family embarked on a journey that was to change their course of life forever. This family traveled from Nairobi, Kenya, to Mombasa, where they boarded a ship to take them over 6,000 miles to the port of Karachi in Pakistan, a journey that took nearly a week. From Karachi, they traveled to Rabwa to meet their spiritual leader, which was the main aim of the journey. And that spiritual leader was, of course, Hazrat Mirza Bisharuddin Mahmud Ahmad, Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhu Khilafat Sani, who was the then worldwide leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The father of this family was Mr. Muhammad Yusuf Ahmedi, who had accepted Ahmediyyat in the mid-1930s, when he was about 17 years of age. Together with his father, his mother had already died, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. The person responsible, was always God who's responsible, but the person that Allah uses for this conversion was Maulana Sheikh Mubarak Ahmad Sahib, the pioneering missionary sent by the second caliph to the shores of East Africa in the 1930s. Mr. Yusuf Ahmedi was accompanied by his wife, Mrs. Zakia Khanum Ahmedi, and 4 sons and a daughter. I was one of the fortunate ones who can recall parts of that journey, and especially the meeting with the reformer, even though I was only 8 years of age. Until then, we had just heard the voice of Khalifatul Masih through his speeches and Friday sermons, which were sent to the Nairobi Mission House on gramophone tapes, and the Jamaat used to congregate in the Nairobi Mosque compound to listen. To be truthful, as a young boy, I cannot remember much of what was being said. But to this day, the voice of the Khalifa still reverberates through my ears, and the love affair with Khilafat had started. But now we were to be in the same room as our spiritual father, and the excitement was too much to bear. To this day, I remember entering the room in Qasr Khilafat, where Khalifatul Masih was lying on his bed. As you all know, that he had been attacked with a knife some years earlier when he was leading the prayers in Masjid Mubarak and suffered an injury from which he never fully recovered. This actual unfortunate incident happened on the 10th of March 1954. As we entered the room, he turned his face towards us, and I clearly remember being blinded by that light, that nur, that emanated from his blessed face. The pure white beard was filled with a light that only true men of God are blessed with. My father, after his bath, had a habit of writing to Khalifatul Masih for prayers in everything that he did in life, matters in relation to studies, work, marriage, and it was always his ardent desire to meet his spiritual father and leader. But because my parents were looking after my great-grandmother, Mrs. Hafiz Ahmed Saiba, full-time, it was a full-time job because she had been blind for the last 30 years of her life. So to go to Pakistan for 2 to 3 months would have been impossible to leave her behind. So until she died at the remarkable age of 111 years in 1959, after her demise, my father started to make plans to make the trip, to make it worthwhile. And the wait, as you can imagine, was well worth it. And Khalifatul Masih, Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhu, also allowed my father to massage his legs. The rest is a blur. But at that tender age, the love of Khilafat was imbibed in me and all my siblings. But we were too young to realize then what a great human being we had blessed to meet. All my family members are greatly indebted to our parents, especially my father and mother, who had this ardent desire to meet their leader with their family so that we could all be blessed spiritually and establish a bond which, by the grace of God, is still very much intact. It was perhaps this meeting of Hazrat Muslim Maud that served as a blessing, so much so that all of us brothers who were present at that mulaqat when we were really young, they all at one time became members of the UK National Alumni at one time. It was only after the demise of Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu in 1965 that we really started to study the man and his achievements that made us and makes us to this day wonder in awe and amazement at how a human being could achieve so much. I do not have the time to discuss even a fraction of what he achieved, but you could say I remember him daily as I read the Holy Quran 5-volume commentary, which is a unique masterpiece. It is an excellent exegesis on the true meaning of the Holy Quran and has set a standard by which all future commentaries ought to be judged. The English translation is widely known as the 5-volume commentary, which I personally read every day and use it for my research and speeches. And I personally have been doubly blessed, as Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu was the paternal uncle, the puppa of my wife. Because of the early death of my wife's father, Khalifa Salahuddin Marhum, Hazrat Muslim Maud anhu used to care a lot for her family of 4 brothers, 4 sisters, and their widowed mother. And often the 4 sisters, would be seen playing in Khalifatul Masih Sani's courtyard, and he would address them lovingly as his kittens. So after my first visit in 1960, little was I to know that some 16 years later, I would be returning to Rabwa, this time to take my bride and bring her to England. And it was on this, my second visit to Rabwa, to get married, that another golden memory was going to be etched in my heart, as it was my good fortune that Hazrat Mirza Nasir Ahmed Khalifatul Masih Salis Rahimahullah Ta'ala read my nikah in Masjid Mubarak on the 6th of March 1976 after Asr prayers. He came for the Rukhsti to my wife's home in Darul Yaman on the 8th of March, and the Walima at the Jadid guest house, where we were staying as guests the day after. And you can see some of the photos there, and the audience you can see was Sheikh Mubarak Sahib was at the front. After the Rukhsti, at the Rukhsti rather, there's a photo there, which you're looking at now. The Talawat was recited by Maulvi Bisharat Ahmad Bashir Sahib, and a special nazam recited by Chaudhry Shabir Ahmad, who was the Wakilul Mal Awal. And he had taken excerpts from Hazrat Masih Maud's poems to make the special poem for that occasion. And this nikah was also recorded, and the Rukhsati and the Walima was also recorded in the Al-Fazl of the day. And there's a picture of that, the cutting from Al-Fazl that it's difficult to read, but it mentions the relationship of my wife with being linked to Hazrat Masih Maud Islam's family through her grandfather, and that her father had come from London and originally from East Africa. So I visited Pakistan a few times after that and was able to have mulaqat, and also met him every time he toured UK. On one occasion, I had the pleasure to play table tennis with him in Mahmood Hall. I don't have a photo of that, but I think somebody does have it in UK Jamaat. That would be memorable to have as well. Khudam al-Ham, they used to play sports between Maghrib and Isha prayers in Mahmood Hall. And on one occasion, Hazur saw us playing, and he came down, and I had the good fortune to play a few points with him. I also recall Khalifa Salis. He is the one who coined the logo of the Jamaat, love for all, hatred for none, when he was in the UK in one of his tours. Another memorable occasion when in London was his lecture at the Deliverance from the Cross exhibition in London and in the 70s. So there's a lot of memories, and I have a lot to go through. So now I'll go on to my I think we were looking at the photos of my marriage in Rabwa in Darul Yamin, outside my wife's house. So after the establishment of contact with the two Khulafas, I was fortunate then to come in contact with Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala. I met him for the first time in October 1982 when he visited Gillingham Jamaat to inaugurate the opening of Nasr Hall Mosque and also be the keynote speaker at an event held at the Chatham Town Hall with a large number of dignitaries, and we all witnessed for the first time Hazur's masterful style of captivating an audience with his command of the English language. Some very well-educated members of our own community were left speechless. In fact, before Hazur attended the two functions, coming straight from London, he stopped over at my parents' house in Duncan Road in Gillingham for a cup of tea and to refresh himself. It was an honor beyond expectations. There you see him meeting outside my father's house. And then we saw photos inside when he came inside the house as well. So in the same year, my wife and I went to Pakistan with our young son, as our brother-in-law had passed away in Rabwa. This gave us an opportunity to attend the Jalsa Salana, and I'll recall my first mulaqat in Rabwa with him, with Khalifa Rabi in December 82, after he had become Khalifa, and this was his first Jalsa Salana. Hazur, I remember, gave me a gift, and I've still got it, a gold-plated Schaefer pen, which when I reflect upon was quite symbolic, because in later years he was to assign me to write a book in response to Salman Rushdie's satanic verses, and I was also to serve as Secretary of Publications for many years. And as I said, I still have that pen after nearly 40 years. So the memories I have of Khalifa Rabi are so many, and I would need several hours to share all of them. The one that is at the top of the list is playing squash with him for almost 6 months before an injury to his eyebrow stopped our games. He used to play 3 times a week with me and Major Mahmood Sahib. And we were very fortunate that he would give us a time. And I remember going to Fazl Mosque, and I would sit in his car and go to the squash and come back with him. It was an honor beyond words. And sometimes my son, eldest son, then used to sit with us as well. Also, I have a unique, perhaps they can show a video of, we have a lot of footage of Hazur playing squash. He had a lot of stamina. He was in his late 50s when he played. He had been coached by the legendary Hashim Khan of Pakistan, and we used to go and watch him play in the finals. He was also coached by him. And Hazur, out of his love for the game, used to come and watch all our squash matches of the Jamaat that we held. So being a sports secretary of Majlis Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, I arranged a lot of tournaments in most sports, and Hazur used to come to many of these, like badminton, squash, hockey, basketball, cricket, marathon walks, cycle marathon, etc., etc. I think the video has perhaps stopped. It's not working. Maybe later on they can hear it. Oh, there it is. And we had a lot of stamina. I used to book 2 sessions, an hour and a half, and he used to bring me a special drink, which was tea and coffee mixed with honey. It was very refreshing, and to this day, I occasionally mix my tea with some coffee and add some honey to it. But this is what Hazur, he was so passionate about the game, and he was very despondent when he got the injury, and he said that some members of Jamaat had already feared their concerns that he shouldn't be playing, so he said this would probably be the end of it. But anyway, I was really blessed to have had the chance to play with Hazur. The other 2 great events that I was a coordinator for the cycle marathon and the hockey tournament. And I remember Sheikh Rahman Sahib was the official Mure Khaja secretary, and he arranged all the festivities during the centenary year. And I was allocated the cycle marathon and from Bradford to London in March 89 as part of the centenary celebrations, where we raised £21,000 for 3 charities. And Hazur received us at the end in Fazl Mosque, and you can see the very warm embrace. There it is. It was a very emotional time for me, finishing a 9-day cycle marathon. And Hazur, as you can see, expressed his love with this lovely embrace. And the other photo is another clear picture of the final session. And we also presented Hazur with a cycle, which he then took to Islamabad. So the other, there's Hazur riding a bicycle outside the Fazl Mosque. So the other major event was the hockey tournament held in Gillingham, where many outside teams and guests were invited. Hazur so enjoyed the day that in his speech at the end, he mentioned that it was one of the happiest days of the year for him, if not his life. So we can see Hazur sitting there watching. It was a very cold day, but still the atmosphere was such, the hockey match was so exciting that they didn't leave. And we won, the Ahmedi team won the tournament on penalties. Now, a very interesting thing, after the success of this tournament, Hazur asked us to form a Jamaat team that could do tours in Europe. So we wanted an official name for our team. So I remember it was the month of Ramadan, a Russian team had come to Kent. So I was accompanied by Drs. Farid, Sahib, and Dr. Zaid Khan, who joined me on one of Hazur's walk in Wimbledon Common, and we requested Hazur to give the club his name at the beginning of the walk. Hazur hesitated, saying that he shouldn't use his name, but he said he would think about it. And at the end of the walk, he said he had come up with the situation resolved. He said, "Okay, you can name the club MTA Hockey Club. MTA standing for Muslim Tigers Ahmadiyya, which also stands for Mirza Tahir Ahmad." So he's mentioned this a couple of times in Majlis Irfan and the homeopathy class, that the original MTA was given to the hockey club, to whom he had prescribed Arnica Bryonia 200 for stamina and for quick healing of injuries. So now I move on to some of the personal memories that I have of Hazur. I remember, his question-answer sessions were legendary. And also his wit was, bewildering. I remember a person asked, was a non-Muslim friend who came, and I said, he just wants a yes or no answer. Hazur said, "Okay, answer me this, with a yes or no. Have you stopped beating your wife?" So if you think about it, if you say yes or no, you are lumbered. If you say yes, you mean you used to beat your wife, and you say no, then you're still beating her. So this Hazur meant to say was, there's some things that you have to explain in detail. A yes or no will not suffice. There was another non-Ahmedi who came to the question answer sessions, and he addressed Hazur saying that being a Khalifa, he sees no nur on Hazur's face. Hazur asked him, who are the brightest nur in history? And the man replied, of course, Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. To which Hazur inquired, did Abu Jahl see that nur? And he left it at that. One more incident which has very emotive memories for me was near his last days. Hazur was still conducting question-answer sessions. And I was in the studio in Mahmood Hall during a French question and answer session. At the end, when Hazur got up, he stumbled and almost fell on the floor. You can imagine how distraught we were. But he composed himself and he left the room. He was due to leave the Isha prayers almost immediately after. And when I was at the back of the mosque, we all waited for more than 10 minutes. And I was sure announcement would be made that Hazur could not lead the prayers and someone else would. But lo and behold, Hazur arrived, and I could not believe my eyes. It reminded me of the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, when during his last days, he came to lead the faithful in prayer, supported by 2 Sahabis. Another incident that still lives with me is the marathon walk of 1986, when I wasn't an organizer, I was a participant. And the organizers had mistakenly forgotten some signs. And I remember I was some of the few who had lost our way. A recent English convert, Noman Newman, was walking with me, and we ended up walking more than the 26 miles allocated. So you can imagine our state. 26 miles is daunting enough as it is, but to walk even more than that, I could hardly walk afterwards. Hazur used to go around in his car to watch and greet the walkers to inspire them. So I was so fatigued that I had to be supported by one of my cousins, Shahid Khan, to go to the Holy Land for the presentation ceremony, where we sat down on the floor. I could hardly walk. During his speech, Hazur at the end mentioned that he was looking forward to seeing me and Numan during the walk, but he found later that we had lost our way due to bad route markings. And Hazur, out of his gracious nature, said that he would like to give a special prize to me and Numan. Can you imagine the surprise and delight? And Shahid told me afterwards that as soon as Hazur mentioned my name, I got up and almost ran to the stage to receive my prize. And I ran back as well. After the function, I asked for Shahid's assistance again, as I still could not walk. He had perhaps seen a miracle, whereas I had witnessed one myself when the Khalifa made the lame walk. Such is the power of the voice of the God's Khalifa. So, this is why we have to listen to the voice of the Khalifa whenever they speak. I would like now just to give some new personal memories of Khalifa Rabi's time, and we were very fortunate. He came to our house in Chatham many times, sometimes on his way to Europe or sometimes just for barbecue. Because my mother's barbecue was renowned, and Hazur liked her recipe. And any chance he used to come to my house and my brother's houses, my sister's house. He also read the nikah of my eldest son, Waqar Ahmedi, with Vijaya Bajwa, daughter of Naseem Ahmed Bajwa Sahib. He also mentioned me in a khutbah Jummah while he was in Spain at the death of Naeem Osman Sahib, who was a literary member of our Jamaat. But when he died, Hazur said that Allah, by Allah's grace, Allah has given us another writer, and he mentioned me my name. So I was really, really fortunate. And then the children's photos. We have a lot of them. There's my first grandchild, Anam. She's nearly 19 now. And this was the Urdu class where Vijaya took her daughter and Hazur lovingly caressed her. So you can imagine the distraught when he passed away. It was such a loss, and that affected millions of Ahmedis. And I managed to write a poem. I'll just find the poem. I think you can hardly read it there, so I'll... if you give me a minute. I was also very fortunate to bear the coffin of Khalifa Rabi when he was being buried at Islamabad. So the poem that I wrote for Hazur, in memory of Hazur, was: our every single thought, our every single prayer, ever since that day when the Jamaat was in total despair, suddenly made us all aware, completely aware, what a Khalifa we had with whom few could compare. That radiant, that ever-smiling face, so full of light, that smile that will never extinguish, try as they might. That nur, that light that emanated from that face, none this world could ever match its grace. In spite of the pain and hurt that you bore with such fortitude, you still praised the Almighty Lord with gratitude. Never have you felt so helpless so sad, so morose, for now that pain is within us which grows and grows. But the ever-living God, who gave us Tahir, we will always applaud, for he has a right to take us all back to the final resting abode. And the ever-gracious God has already taken away the hurt and the pain by granting to the Ahmadiyya community Masroor Ahmad, who is our gain. May He, the Almighty, be Masroor's guide, protector, and helper, and may His Khilafat day by day grow stronger. So now we entered the era of Mirza Masroor Ahmad Rifatul Misi Khamis Eidullah Ta'ala bin Aziz. I know we listened to Abid Khan's diaries and his lectures of so many incidents in his personal liaison with Hazur. So, but I still have a few recollections of Khalifa Khamis. The first one, of course, is at the time of his when he became Khalifa, when he asked the Jamaat to sit down, and everybody, not just in Melrose Road and the mosque compound, but everywhere around the world, sat down because this was the voice of the Khalifa. Another recollection I have is he beckoned me to his office one day and asked me to update my book that Khalifa Rabi had initiated, to update it with the incidents of 9/11, 7/7, and the Danish cartoons. And he also redesigned the cover of the book, which you can see. And he also had it translated into Urdu. So his constant advice and guidance, when me being Secretary Isha'at, has been invaluable. He's always gives advice. He lovingly looks after you, and he also designs the covers of some of the books, especially the World Crisis book at the cover and the Noah's Ark. When he came to the bookshelf and he asked, "What do you think of this design?" I said, "It's beautiful." He said, I designed it." So I was glad I mentioned that it was a very good design. I was also very fortunate that he also read the nikah of my youngest son, Mubariz Ahmedi, with Hina Rahman, daughter of Mahbub and Nasser Rahman. So we should listen and look at all his programs just to see his enigmatic smile, which melts hearts. Whether it is a Swalaja with little children or national amlas of countries around the world, this pandemic has given us an insight into Huzur's work and his love for the whole world. You see, at the beginning, I mentioned having at first just heard the voice of the Khalifa Sani, when I was very young and I could not understand. I would also like to compare this, perhaps, when a newborn baby is born and the azan and takbir is read out aloud in each ear of the child, according to the tradition of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Now, seriously, what can a newborn child make of the azan takbir, and even that in a different language? But even for an Arab child, the words could not make any sense at that time. But what this tradition does is preparing the child metaphorically for its raison d'être, that of worshipping God Almighty, for which it has been created. The words of the azan will strike some sort of unforgetful chord and serve as a reminder in later years for the child to always offer salat. So in the same way, when our Khalifa speaks, whether it be in jalsas, Friday sermons, other events, we should encourage our young to just embrace his voice and let him become part of you. A love bond will be created, which will only grow stronger and stronger. Couple that with writing regularly to your Khalifa for anything, and I mean anything, he will respond. I am amazed at some of the letters my grandchildren write to Huzur and what lovely responses they get back, and they treasure those letters lovingly. Of course, now, because of the pandemic, we cannot go to Islamabad and say prayers behind the Khalifa, but when, inshallah, the things get better, you should make it a point to take your children and say some prayers once a month, once a fortnight, behind the Khalifa, because this is yet another umbilical link you create, which will strengthen your bond no end. So the love affair with Khilafat continues, which was started personally for me through my parents. And now we have hopefully instilled this in our children and our grandchildren. And long may this continue. So, this is a subject that, we could talk for hours on the love for the Khalifa and your personal memories. But I think I will leave it there. And perhaps if people have any questions, then I would leave it to them. Thank you.
Jazakallah, Arshad Ahmedi. Such a wonderful actually lecture, and for sharing the treasure of these memories. And I'm pretty certain that this must have highlighted the importance of Khilafat amongst our viewers, and how the Nizam-e-Khilafat blessings, may Allah give us all the blessings of Nizam-e-Khilafat from every aspect. We have very complimentary comments throughout, actually, from our viewers, and they have really are saying that, mashallah, how the lecture has been reminding them of the Nizam-e-Khilafat, and they're talking about highlighting this precious subject of your memories. Are there any other particular memories you would like to add on, that now that we do have a time for you to talk
yes,
about?
there's so many. I was part of the research group. The head of that was Mr. Rafiq Sahib. At that time, he was Sadaqun Ahmedi. And I remember Huzur was going on a tour to Germany during, for his opening of mosques and question answer sessions. And he, as a reward, he took me, Abdul Basit, Farid Ahmed, Secretary Mullah Khaja now, and Rizwan Ahmed as a present to accompany him on this tour. And you can imagine, with if you ever know how Huzur's car is driven, it's more than 100 miles an hour. So he gave us a choice when we met him, saying you can either go before us or after us, or you can try and keep pace with us. So we normally decided to, go after him and drive a bit slower. But those question answer sessions where in Germany, for example, where we went, they were amazing. How we captivated different audiences, different groups of people, from Berlin to Hamburg to Frankfurt. So such a busy schedule, but he was always in the best of spirits. And even during the tour, we went to Huzur arranged for me to teach squash to Amir Sahib Germany and some other members of the Kafla who had gone with us. So he was looking after everybody's interest. And then the marathon, the walks at Wimbledon Common. Huzur started, the walks at Wimbledon. He used to feed the birds at the lake, and then he started races for people to race. And the one that would come last, he said, you are to give them breakfast or dinner. So he started the Khwaja Club. Khwaja Qamar Sahib, who died recently, was the Huzur named it after him. And so actually, this is very interesting. It was at one of the dinners in 1985 that my elder brother Akram was the sports secretary then. And the London Marathon had just started in London in 1985. And Huzur at that dinner said to Akram that you should arrange a marathon walk rather than a marathon run, because knowing the members of our Jamaat, they're not that physically, agile. So he was looking after the interests of everybody. So at that time, they arranged the marathon walk. And the first one that was arranged was at Islamabad with 4 different north, south, east, where people went to certain, all the 4 areas and join and congregate in Islamabad. But after that, it was not a fair terrain for everybody. So then Islamabad became the center and where walks started and finished. Then I became secretary in 1987, and we started the marathon walks, and that was one of the great times. 1989 was, of course, the centenary year where the marathon walk was replaced by the cycle marathon. So there's many other events that we could talk about. Were there any questions from any of the viewers?
So, in terms of the advice for the keeping relation with Khilafat, you, mashallah, had fantastic experiences as close with the Khalifa Rabi Rahimullah, and obviously you now had the opportunity with the Khalifa al-Masih al-Khamis, Ayyadallah Talab al-Aziz. So, what advice would you give to the viewers or the Ahmedi Muslim, or particularly the youth, to keep in touch with the Khilafat and keep on going that relation?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps very easy to say, keep in touch with Khilafat. How do you keep in touch with Khilafat? It has to be from the heart. My father taught us. Through him, we know how to write to Huzur. I mean, we were living in Kenya, and Huzur Khalifa Sani was in Pakistan, 6,000 miles away. But he wrote diligently, frequently, for any advice. So now we have in UK, especially UK Jamaat, we are so blessed. Huzur is at our doorstep. And if we cannot go and say namaz behind him, write to him, we are the losers. So we have to be sincere in our hearts, listen to him. As I said, when the Khalifa speaks, we should listen. Even your children, sit them down, even if they don't understand. Just that the voice of the Khalifa should enter their hearts. From a very young age, that love will never weaken. But, for our youth especially, they're busy with other things, they should make time to listen to Huzur's Friday sermons, which he insists upon time and again. So these are the key for our secular life, if we follow the spiritual guide. You can be fortunate to be to offer your services, but do it to win the pleasure of God Almighty. And then the Khalifa will come running to you if you are sincere in your work. Whichever department, whatever position you have in your Jamaat, do it diligently. I remember another one of Khalifa Sani's very memorable, I think is in one of the Majlis Mushawarat, he said, a time will come when people will offer themselves to do service for Jamaat, but they'll be refused. Because at the time when the Jamaat needed them, they did not come forward. So this is what I tend to say to all my local Jamaat here. Don't shy away from the Jamaat. Attend every meeting that you're invited to. There is blessing in that. That meeting is your attachment to Khilafat. There is a link that cannot be broken. They are weak amongst us, but we must carry them along with us. This is a team effort that we have to have, because the Jamaat has to be unified. This is what separates us from all other communities around the world.
Right, Jazakallah for that one. In terms of, you mentioned sports a lot. In terms of sports, was there any particular advice given by any of the Khulafa regarding sports? I know you highlighted that. So was there any specific advice given by the Khulafa with regards to sports?
Yeah, obviously I had plenty of time with Khalifa Rabi, but even Khalifa Salis, he loved football more. He was more of a football player. But Khalifa Rabi loved badminton and squash. As I said, when Huzur was studying in the 1950s, when he came to London, the Khandan, Huzur's family, was responsible for bringing Hashim Khan to UK. They were a poor family, the Hashim Khan, and he was a legendary world champion for 6 years. But because of the favor done by the Khandan, they developed a friendship with Huzur, and Huzur was taught. And whenever I used to play squash or watch squash with him, Huzur said, Hashim Khan taught me two things: how to hold a racket from the end, and how to do a lob service. And obviously, Huzur, was really, really fit. Apart from the walks he did every morning, come rain, come shine, come snow, in the winter or in the summer. He used to walk 1 hour on Wimbledon Common after Fajr, and even during Ramadan, he used to walk before Iftar. And also, he had an exercise bike. He kept himself fit, and he was in the late 50s when he was doing all playing the squash and everything else. So, he was a cyclist, he was a swimmer, he was a horse rider, he was good at archery. In the Tahir magazine that we published after his demise, I wrote an article on Huzur as a sportsman. I remember one incident in Pakistan when there was a family picnic and a child accidentally fell into the lake or the river. And while everybody was thinking what to do, is already Huzur was in the water, pulling the child out. So he loved shooting. I remember when he became very enthusiastic about squash, and he was also thinking on having a collapsible court built in Fazl Mosque, and then maybe a court in Islamabad. But then I think his health deteriorated after that, and that idea was shelved. But he also loved swimming, and he asked me and the then National Qaid, Mohamed Sahib, to look into how to make a swimming pool, which then they used that expertise to build a swimming pool in Rabwa, which is still being used at the moment. So, or generally, Huzur was a keen sportsman. And he also loved good food. As I said, every family had a favorite. He knew where the family had the best dish. Like my mother's was the kebab. Somebody else's, bangan gosh were the best ones. Huzur knew where that family. So, he loved life to the full. He was an avid reader. He read all the books. So, it's some fantastic memories.
Right. You talk about the books. I know you mentioned towards the end of your lecture that Khalifa Khamis has asked you to rewrite the book or update, shall we say, and include the latest incidents. So what kind of advice you were given, or what kind of conversations did you have when you, let's say, rewrote your book about what you mentioned towards the end?
Well, the main book was written during the time of Khalifa Rabi when he appointed me. And when he first gave me the task, I said, I've never written a book. He said, don't worry, you just keep writing and you come to me when you want to. So I had a golden opportunity to meet him whenever I wanted and get guidance from him. And this was pre-internet days, so I used to go to the library and search out records and anti-Islam history, how it all culminated in the product of Salman Rushdie and the like. So when that was finished, and Huzur wanted that published outside so that it could get exposure outside the Jamaat. So when Khalifa Khamis became Khalifa and he asked me to rewrite or update the book, then we sent copies, I think 600 copies to all the MPs of the British government at that time. This is going back several years now. So, this was the honor that Huzur gave me. And we got some good responses and some not so good responses from the MPs. But this was Huzur's vision. And, there's so many budding authors that we have in our Jamaat. And being Secretary Isha'at, you come across a lot of talent that we do have from Canada, especially from United States. So I would encourage some people from UK also have written articles, and they're probably under review at the moment. But Huzur's research group is so extensive now that they're covering every subject. I know that the Tabligh department are working very hard with innovative ideas. Because this Khilafat is modern Khilafat, as you could say, using social media now, which is a different kettle of fish altogether. So, and Huzur is up with it. I'm the old email type and nothing more. but Huzur is savvy about all the modcons of today's social media, and to be competitive with the world and what being offered, we have to fight that with that knowledge, and our youngsters are doing a great job in answering these allegations using the right media.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. There's a question, I guess you touched upon this, but I'll read the question from one of the viewers. What is the best way to serve Khilafat for those who do not hold any specific office? Please advise. So,
Waqf-e-Azi is a thing that is being encouraged by Hazur now. In a recent National Amna meeting, Hazur gave the Waqf-e-Azi secretary a target of 1,000, starting with National Amna members and regional auxiliary organizations. But this is for everybody. If they can do Waqf-e-Azi, they are like missionaries. And, so that itself will bring you closer to Khilafat itself. You have to do good works. You have to pray. And there are prerequisites for gaining the love of Khilafat. I know it's difficult. As I said, in the time of you see the mosque in Khalifa Rabi's time, the Jamaat was very small. Now it's gone beyond expectations. So it's going to be more difficult to actually forge a physical link. But writing to him, he remembers the names. If you are persistent, if you do it with sincerity and want to gain the love of Allah through your Khalifa, then you cannot break that link. And that has to be in the whole family. If the whole family is united in this quest, then God will answer your prayers, and you will get a closer bond with Khalifa. Some people go after many years, and Hazur still remembers them by name. So don't underestimate the memory of Khilafat. Allah has given them this divine insight where they can remember people from years back, and they know what their problems were. So you have, it's like in life, you can't get everything, but your aim, your endeavor should be always to reach the top. You cannot stop trying.
right, Jazakallah, Arshad. That was quite inspirational to listen to your lecture, and Jazakallah for sharing such lovely memories through your photographs, your journey of starting from Rabwa and your childhood and how it got into Khalifa Salis and then Khalifa Rabi and then now Khalifa Khamis. All this Khilafah journey has been remarkable, that what you shared, and the comments have been pouring in saying that how people have when watched this program and thanking you for sharing those memories, and we really appreciate, and I'm pretty certain that the viewers have thoroughly enjoyed and this program, and definitely the love of Khilafat and the Nizam-e-Khilafat, something which is really dear to them, and that has reminded them again.
I'll perhaps repeat this, that it was my parents, it's their blessing, their vision of their heartfelt desire to meet the Khalifa and start that bond that alhamdulillah is still intact. And so it is the parents' duty to make sure that their children, their progeny, still stays attached to Khilafat somehow or other, whether they are hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away.
Jazakallah. May Allah give us all the blessings of Nizam-e-Khilafat. Now, I would like to thank our viewers for watching our online lectures. Just a reminder, please don't forget our Urdu lecture, which is on the life of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by Akhlaq Ahmed Anjum Sahib, Marabi Silsila, on Monday the 8th of March at 8:15 p.m. Then on Tuesday, we have the English lecture, which is the African Traditional Religion by Fazl Ahmed who's working in the Review of Religions, again on Tuesday, the 9th of March at 8:15 p.m. So can I just now request Arshad Sahib for you to lead us in the silent prayer, if you may, please.
Yes, again, Jazakallah to the Talim team. You're doing a sterling job, and may Allah give you strength. Please join me in silent prayer. Ameen.
Okay, Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalam.